Hello and welcome back, this is ProTaleDev back with another Dungeon Farm Tycoon game, and I'm a little bit ill, but I'm just going to try and get through what I've got, what I've worked on for the last week or two again. This time it's focusing more on the NPC side and some updates, and specifically to the objectives. I'm going to try and do this in one take because I'm not very well. But anyway, let's get started. So the first thing is you can now destroy buildings and different kinds of objects while in the tutorial area. So before I had them as permanently undestroyable, specifically for the tutorial's sake. However, I figured that you should be able to remodel even in the tutorial and just have the objectives kind of tell you what to do. Now there is objectives, you can do that. So yeah, you can destroy all these little objects now, you can destroy everything, you can go all the way back to the beginning and get as much money as you want from that and really customize it even in this tutorial island. Also, when you're destroying something, it's a lot more accurate now, because I've lowered the amount of size that the collision box needs, so now it's even more accurate. There won't be other things that get deleted with it if you just click onto the edge. Now it should be a lot more accurate. There is now a new dungeon type. So now we've split the dungeons into 6. So originally there was just 3. There was the normal dungeon, there was a dungeon that was just higher for paid, and this one which was the custom one. Now I've changed it, so now we have these dungeon entrances, and what these do is they just allow you to place dungeons down. If I click one, it'll just be like a normal one. It'll have a slightly different colour. It's a bit hard to see right now, because obviously it's just turned night, but if I just quickly build that up and then put this down, you should, when it becomes light, you'll be able to see the difference. And what this means is that these 3 are just an entrance to the dungeon underneath, so that it's a pre-built dungeon, while these castles are actually the custom dungeon. And we actually have different types. As I mentioned a long time ago, I wanted a small, medium and large, and now we've got it. So when you try and place this one down, it'll create a small one inside the dungeon manager, this one a medium size, and this one a large size. As you can see, they're demonstrated by their colour as well, so the different colours: blue, small, medium, green, and large is yellow. Now on to the more exciting thing, the objectives. So if I click on this new button that I've put there, you'll see we have some objectives. Let's actually maximize so you can see it better. So if we quickly check it out, it's reach a rating of 500 or above. We're at 120 out of 500. Own 6 shops. Obviously we've not done anything, so that's obviously 0 and 6. Place 3 dungeon entrances. So that's just the normal dungeons we just mentioned, so just these 3. Produce 500 water resource. I'm actually going to lower this because it takes a while, and this is the tutorial when I try and lower that down. Produce 300 food resource. Same with that, I'll probably lower that. And then these goals, I might just have 2 of these as a basic tutorial, and then the next island will actually have everything set up ready for you to make a custom one. So dungeon goals, which is construct and finalize on custom man-made dungeon, 1. Build 8 or more rooms in the dungeon editor. Collect 10 crystals from monsters and gain 100 gold or more from monsters. These are all actually set up and working. I have a bunch of other objectives built in and set up with the objective script. I suppose I could show you that now. If we just go in the scripts, there's been a lot of script activity and changes in this as well. Tons of changes. So what we've got here is we've got our objectives, and it's very similar to how I did Turtle Trial, but it's a lot more optimized and quite a lot of differences. Especially when we account the first stage. So depending on what the level is, based on its name, it will determine what stage is activated, and the stage function is what controls the specific world objectives. We have it here where it's just some text, but then we add in the specific counts at the end. And these counts are all being tracked in both players' stats and in here, and in a lot of other different scripts like the dungeon manager and things. And I had to implement a ton of different types of stats just to track unique aspects. For example, how much damage a player has done, or if they've managed to get a certain population. Those are just a couple of examples of things that I'm now tracking. So that's the objectives, and it's very, very straightforward at the moment. Once you complete all the objectives, you'll get an option maybe at the bottom right as a button to just, do you want to proceed or do you want to stay on that island? So the next thing is the building rating is now added. So something you may have noticed when I placed down these castles, when I placed down the cave, is that they actually increased their rating. So all of the objects apart from the food and water now adds rating. And the path as well. The path doesn't add rating, but if you add some scenery and things, it will add rating. Now this is previously what was happening is that it would add rating based on how many items are in the world. If you had a certain scenery, I think it was like times by 2, so if you had 20 scenery, you would have 40 scenery you would have 40 rating. Essentially, that's how we were doing it before. Now we're actually adding individual ratings for individual items, so as well as that. So if you have a certain amount of items in the world, that's still going to add rating, so you're still going to get a bunch of rating for the basic scenery. However, if you add individual scenery, you'll also get a bonus rating for adding those in. So if I add them, you'll see that our rating starts to go flying up. So if I add a bunch, as you can see, our rating has gone up, and it's just being recalculated now. So we got it up to quite a lot. Of course, bigger islands means you'll have more room to put more plants, more buildings and things like that. Different buildings also have unique rating. Now at the bottom here, it doesn't actually tell you like what it's adding yet, but it does add rating, and depending on what it is, will determine how much you get. So now with that extra rating, what we can do is, let me just show you, for example, with this cave. So we've got this. If I add this cave in, it should recalculate. There you go. And obviously, you could add the more expensive the object. I've made it so that the more it kind of based on category. So if you, as I mentioned, the store will have something like maybe 5 rating, while a house may have 10 or something like that. But they're all based on category. I haven't individually separated them out. I'm not sure if I'll do that, but we'll see. Okay, now on to the next really big aspect of these changes. If you're interested in, if you're wondering why, last week I did mention that I would be moving my, I would be working on the combat for all of the different monsters. I'm going to actually have that as a separate video. I have been working on them, but I want it as a separate video because I want to do them all in one go and just focus on them. So for now, I'm going to look at the last big aspect, which is the NPCs. So the NPCs have been reworked massively. Their entire AI script, their adventure script has been completely optimized, and there's been a ton of removes and redundant script, and there's been a bunch of improvements on current script, as well as controlling it with individual aspects of state. I can actually show you that quickly. So now what we've got, it may look very similar, but it's actually got a lot of changes. So first of all, we now handle it through these specific states. So if we have an NPC state, we'll trigger a specific state to handle it better. We actually search for the individual, we actually search the whole map for those actual. We actually search for them for the objects that they're going to be following and trying to get to first before doing anything. And if it isn't there, then we can. Then obviously the array that it's going into will be 0, and they won't be able to find it. So this is how they're making sure that they don't actually get lost. Of course, if they don't find it in, let's say, the shop, then they're going to go to the dungeon and leave. We also have all these little commands as well, but I'll go into them in a minute. So basically, these states are going to help me to visualize what is going on and control it a little bit better. Some of these have been removed and optimized a little bit, replaced some of the code, and a lot of this has been rehandled, so it's a lot more smaller, because all I'm doing is calling a specific state. So enough talking about script, let's actually show what it's doing. Let's delete these dungeons and all of the key objects in this world. So now when someone arrives, there's nothing. So there's nothing here, nothing's happening, and we still have a population of 0. But what's actually happening? Because we are actually getting happiness rating and we are getting updated. So let's click on this. Now in the script, what I'm doing is I'm actually calling out their name and their activity, just so I can track it a little bit better. I'm thinking of maybe having that as its own unique slot, or maybe even having when you click on an NPC, having their thoughts underneath their activity displayed in this sort of way. But basically we can see what's actually happening. So hopefully you can see this. If not, I'll just read it out. So Sophie Campbell has arrived on the island. No dungeon, I'm leaving. Sophie Campbell has left the island. Then we have Olivia Miller has arrived in the island. No dungeon, I'm leaving. And then they've left the island. So what's happening is they are arriving, but there's nothing here, so they don't stay. Let's fix that. So let's add in a very basic dungeon, I don't know, there. So a basic dungeon right there, and we'll see what happens now. Let's clear this, and let's see what happens on here. Oh, and someone has arrived. So we got Aria Campbell has arrived on the island. And they've actually gone to the dungeon. So we'll see them when they finish the dungeon in a second. There we go, they complete the quest, but there's no shop to buy or repair gear. So they've decided to just go back to the dungeon. We also have Mason Miller, who's arrived on the island. Oh, sorry, but they've decided to just leave, I think. So, Aria has died. Of course, she's got no repaired gear, so she wouldn't have had an increase in rating for her gear rating, so she would have had the same chance of dying. And and we've also got Lucy Johnson, who's arrived. Obviously, no shop, so what the big fall for not having a shop is, of course, you're not making any money. They're making money for completing the dungeon, but they've got nothing to spend it on. And then they have like a 50-50 chance to leave, so they might either leave or they might just go back into the dungeon, try and earn more. But without a shop, you're making no money. Let's add in a shop. Very basic shop. Weapon shop. Let's add in a couple of paths. Okay, so rather than it being right next to it, I've just put it over here, just so it's easier to see. And then there we go, they've went into the shop. Let's quickly have a look, see if they buy anything. Oh, and we've got a few buys from a couple of people here. So people who didn't know where the shop was were just sitting there, they didn't have anything to do, they were deciding whether to leave or go back to the dungeon. Now what's happened is that a bunch of them have bought stuff, so our money has increased. And then they've decided, because they were unhappy, they've decided to just go home. So time to go home. If they were happy, they would want to stay. At the moment, we don't have anyone like that yet. But what we're going to do is we're going to wait and see if we can try and get someone's happiness higher. I think at the moment they're unhappy because our food is 0, so we do actually need more food. Otherwise, they're just not going to... More food means more happiness. So let's add in some more food. They should have enough. Just 1 water should hopefully be enough for now. It won't be crazy high, but it should keep us going. So what we want is someone to actually go complete the quest. Okay, so we got him. We got James Smith. So they've gone. Let's keep an eye on James Smith. Got to wait a few seconds. Okay. And they have bought something, but they want to get some rest, and there's nowhere to rest. So now we have to get a house. So if we get, unfortunately we can't afford a house, but the same thing will happen. If they get some rest, what will happen is they'll be able to go back into the dungeon fully equipped, fully ready, and the timer will reset to go into the dungeon. That way they can adventure as much as they want, and then they can, if their happiness is still high afterwards, then they can do it again. And of course each time they do it, their equipment and if they buy, their equipment will be higher, their experience rating will be higher, and they'll die less and less and earn more and more money. So they'll end up paying more and more for the shop. We also have the NPC's collision disabled when they go into the house or a shop or a dungeon, so that when you're clicking on a building, you don't accidentally click on the adventurer NPC UI. So now you can't just click on a building and it'll come up with that, it should come up with the building upgrades instead. NPC sprites have also been disabled correctly, so they'll appear and disappear when they come to a specific building that they need to go to or not. You should have also noticed that the NPC now has a second name, as well as and their first name is a bit more diverse. I've added in a ton of new names. It's right up here. So I've added in a first name set, and for males and females I've added double the amount, but I've added a bunch of second names as well, just to make the characters a little bit more diverse and interesting. Now, for the most part, that is what I've done so far. It really was a redesign of the NPC's movement and tracking and how it works, and really just to show off kind of what you need to do, and make sure the game doesn't crash as well. It was really to make sure that the game did not crash at all while we were doing this, to make sure that it was all working and fixed, and sort of almost ready to be built out a bit more, some more levels and things. So now with objectives, we can now kind of customize this and playtest. So I've been doing a lot of playtests of this for a couple of hours, just doing different things, trying different things to try and break it, and it's starting to become more and more robust. So hopefully next time either we'll be looking on more bug fixes and just general fixes and changes to the game, or I've finished the monster attacks completely and I'll be doing a separate video on them. So stay tuned for that. This has been ProTaleDev, and I'll see you next time.